So, welcome to Startup Faceoff. This is an interactive discussion debate among active entrepreneurs in the startup community here. I'm the startup coach, founder of TorontoStarts. We're the largest startup community in Toronto with over 22,000 active entrepreneurs in the GTA. We do all sorts of events all the time like this one, and we have other stuff going on. So check out torontostarts.com/events for all our upcoming events and see what's happening. I talked about our four entrepreneurs here. I might as well throw it over to our first one, Justin. Justin, why don't you tell us about you and Javelin?
Thanks, Craig. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us so late in the evening. So to start off, Javelin Sports is a company that I founded back in 2017 with a co-founder. I'm currently acting as the CEO, and the primary thing we do is help sports organizations and players with communication and scheduling. Back in July, we launched a COVID health screening process that within its first month live, we actually got over 100,000 different health screens for players across North America. And since then, we've primarily just been pursuing that route. So making sure that sport players are safe and that everyone's good when they go to an event.
And how is the communities and the sports leagues and all your communities adapted? Have they adapted well?
COVID's actually been interesting. Right when it happened, we launched a survey with all of our users to see, whether they will come back to playing sports as soon as they can or whether they'll wait. And we saw about 50%, so it was 50-50 on whether people were going to wait for a vaccine. In the actual practice of that, what we're finding is almost all kids leagues are up and running and doing great, and parents want their kids back in sports. But the majority of adult leagues are really struggling because a lot of adults are thinking, okay, I'll let my kid go so they can still socialize, be with their friends, but I'm going to be the one who's staying at home. So yeah, it's really hit or miss with the different leagues.
And just to clarification, the rest of us are mostly Toronto focused, but your audience is worldwide?
We're primarily North America right now, just because it's a bit easier to work with someone in your time zone or close to it. We have done some work in Israel and Hong Kong.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that when we're getting feedback about some of our topics and you're talking about your community, they're a little bit more wider than our Toronto area the rest of us are talking about. And speaking about Toronto born and raised, let's talk about you, Deanna, and community.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to meet you. I'm Deanna Berger. I'm a co-founder of Community Mass. So we launched on April 5th as a response to the pandemic and seeing a need to help essential workers and those who could not socially distance with high quality and low cost mass. That has actually been on the move, and it has evolved to more of a lifestyle brand as well, which is really exciting. We still keep our core values of being made in Canada. And we give $1 from each of our products to Food Banks Canada.
That's great. And Trevor, welcome back, a regular here at Toronto Starts. Why don't you tell us about yourself and Songbird Marketing?
Well, my name is Trevor Short. I'm with Songbird Marketing, and I am the managing partner. We are a marketing and PR firm located in Ontario, and we service small and medium businesses like Deanna's company, and we help them with their marketing, their branding, their anything, social media, blogs, anything that you need to do with your marketing, we can actually help you with that.
And you've helped a lot of people in our community, and if people want to,
yes, we do workshops for with Craig all the time, talking about how to startups and entrepreneurs can build their businesses and help them grow and help them get out of their way. Basically, it's some of them tend to fall over their feet marketing is not really natural to a lot of people, so it's something that we do to help point them in the right direction.
I appreciate all your support there.
Thanks.
So this is an open discussion, and we're going to have a healthy debate on a few of these things, but we might as well have Justin kick it off. Justin, what are we talking about first?
Thanks, Craig. So the question that I wanted to ask everyone today and kind of kick it off with is, when you're running a startup, how do you build a good product that people like and that people are ideally going to be referring to their friends with limited resources? So a big part of the issue here is that you kind of have a chicken and the egg situation, especially if you're in Canada. right? In the States, if you have a cool idea that someone likes, you might be able to get a lot of money and then build something great. In Canada, it can be a bit more tricky. Investors tend to be really risk adverse here. They're not writing as big check sizes. So you have to figure out a way to build up a product with limited resources. And then also when you need to make it so that when you put it in front of people, they're going to like it and they're going to come back and keep staying with you throughout the process. A bit of a disclaimer is my background is all in the tech startup space. So I'm going to be speaking on behalf of my experiences there. I know that the process that I use won't necessarily work in every industry, but the big kind of mantra that I like to start with is that the first step to building a good product is to build a bad product. A lot of people don't like to kind of think of the idea that the first thing that they make when they start in the tech industry especially isn't going to be great, right? The UX UI isn't going to be perfect. I mean, not everyone's Bill Gates and can just tell what users want. So rather than trying to fight the fact that the first version of the product that you put out won't necessarily be the best version, I instead like to look at it as, okay, knowing or assuming that it won't be very good, how do we then use that to eventually get to a really solid product? I'm not sure if maybe anyone wants to jump in at this point.
Absolutely.
Oh, I've got a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, these people are ready to go. Go ahead, Trevor. Might as well kick it off.
So Craig and I do these workshops every so often, and one of them is about idea validation. And idea validation really is the premise of that is figuring out if what it is that you're trying to build is actually going to be a good product. But the first thing that you have to do is you have to figure out, am I building this product because I'm trying to solve a problem, or am I just building because I think people will like it? Because if you're buying something or building something because you think people are just going to like it, it's going to be a much harder sell for you than if you were trying to build something that's going to solve a problem for people. So, and you mentioned the chicken and egg thing. I think if there's a problem that needs to be solved, do that homework first, figure out what it is about that problem that people are having, and then build your product to meet those needs. That's the natural progression in my mind as to how something like that should go.
Deanna?
So I do absolutely agree with Trevor. Justin, I think it's a really interesting point that you're making to make, and I had never thought about it in terms of make the worst product first. I absolutely agree that you need to do the due diligence, figure out whether or not it's a product that is of value, if it will solve lots of problems, if it is just going to solve your problem, or if it will solve lots of others. I am a huge believer, having said all that, of the minimum viable product. So you figure it out. If you get 60% there, if you get 50% there, absolutely go to market, because I strongly believe, and this is what we did, that if you can, the value and the insight that you will gain with different iterations that you can modify extremely quickly, like in absolute rapid pace, will gain you so much more than if you waited in order to come up with a product that is quote unquote perfect. You will lose so much opportunity. You will lose a huge amount of insight if you wait. It's almost, in my opinion, that analysis paralysis. You can finesse and you can go over and you can, mull it over, but you're going to miss a lot of feedback that you won't necessarily be privy to otherwise.
So it's interesting. We mentioned this actually before we hopped on live. So given that I have the tech background and Deanna has more of a consumer packaged good background, we were curious. Sorry, did I just mislabel that, or?
No, that's okay.
Okay. So we were curious as to how our experiences kind of aligned. And I mean, for me too, everything that I do is based off the idea of a minimum viable product, which is, I guess, the lean startup mantra. And I kind of like to combine that with a lot of the general teachings from Y Combinator, which it sounds like everyone here does as well, where you put something out and then you talk to someone. And I mean, the Y Combinator their whole message for founders is just to talk to users or talk to potential users as much as you can. And that's how you build your company.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that the really critical, sorry, go ahead.
In that case, so you still have, your product still has to solve a problem for somebody, or do something that's gonna make somebody go, hey, I want to buy that. And if the problem that you believe is that they have, and they don't really see that as a need, no one's ever gonna buy it, right? And that's the biggest challenge that you have, is how you're going to convince people to cough up their money for your product, right?
And then I would say even further to that, yes, you can go talk to them, but if you don't have an action plan on how you can actually employ and still modify your product to respond to that feedback in a timely manner, that to me is where the hustle comes. If you can talk to as many people as you want, but if you're waiting another year to change or to evolve the product, I think you're missing a huge opportunity than if it would take you a month.
Yeah. A good way to conceptualize it is if you put out a perfect product and people use it, then it's cool. You validated your product. Mm-hmm. If you put out a bad product and people still want to use it, then you've just validated your idea. Because if someone's willing to go through the frustration of trying to use something that doesn't work just because it really fits one certain need for them, then that's a really strong need. Mm-hmm. It's almost like negative feedback is better than no feedback, because no feedback probably means they just stopped using it. Negative feedback means that they're mad because it's not doing what they really, really wanted it to.
Yeah, and positive.
So Justin, can you
go ahead?
Pardon? Can you clarify for me what you mean by a perfect product?
So our big product is a mobile app. And I think mobile apps are almost extreme versions of this, where people don't want more apps on their phone these days, right? I mean, everyone has enough. There's obviously a lot of data concerns around downloading new apps, and the concern that they're, potentially getting their location tracked or something like that.
Just for jump in here for a second. Everyone I interviewed about the Toronto Startup app, which I was trying to get going, all the entrepreneurs about showing our concept, everyone said, why the F are you building another app? No one wanted the app. So Justin, you're right on. Keep going.
Yeah. And I mean, so our first research for this app was kind of centered around the idea of like, would you download or get an app that would help you play sports? And everyone said yes. I think 70 to 80% of people who we interviewed said yes. I mean, they wanted to play more sports, they'd download this app. In actuality, when I tell people about my app, I mean, it's probably 1% of people, maybe less, who hear about it and then they go and download it. So.
Okay, so my follow-up question to that is, do you think your app is perfect?
Right. Sorry, I kind of got segued.
No, that's okay. It's giving us context. That's great.
So our app as it is, it's not. And I mean, typically a product never will be perfect. When I think of a perfect product, I'm thinking about something that a massive corporation would feel comfortable putting out. It's easy to kind of look at what Apple, Google, Microsoft put out on a new product launch and think, okay, so that's what my product launch has to look like, because that's what the big corporations are doing. But it's important to remember that, I mean, you're likely not a big corporation, right? You don't have the resources that they can invest. So the idea behind a perfect product for me is that it's something that's very scalable. That's one of the things that big corporations have to fight against that small or startups, for example, don't. So if someone's buying a new tech product, the number one buying criteria for them is customer service, right? It's not price, it's not product, it's customer service. And customer service is a great example of something that's not very scalable. So if you get something that's maybe not perfect, but you put it in front of someone and you provide them the best customer service ever, you're talking to them, you're building new things when they request them a day later, then you're giving them one of the best tech experiences they can with an inferior product.
So my question to you then, if we were to look at what it is that you're doing, who is paying you money for the service you're offering?
So I get money from the sports organizations.
So what's their compelling reason for using your service?
So right now, their compelling reason is that they're protecting themselves from anyone in their organization contracting or spreading COVID-19. So there's obviously the fact that they're showing that they're doing their due diligence, where they're screening their players beforehand on our app, and then they're getting a report that shows everyone who was at the event what they got on the health screening process.
Okay, I'm confused. So your product is a health screening app or a sports finding app?
So we started off as a sports finding app, but then we kind of pivoted. It was actually we do a lot in the app. So you can find sports leagues, you can join them, message your friends in them. You can also find and join pickup games.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought that you were talking about at first, and now you're talking about something else, and just kind of lost me there for a second.
Yeah, so that's how it started, and then we started talking with leagues, and they're like, okay, in order to work with you, we need a bunch of league management tools in there. So we built those, and then some of these leagues that we were working with started requesting that we help them with their what was called the return to sport process. So the idea is that everything shut down back in May, and as things slowly came back, the leagues we work with wanted an easy way to screen their players and make sure that they're healthy and they can come and play. So we built that out, and we've just primarily been selling that ever since because it sells the best. But beyond that, it's generally a messaging and communication tool for sports organizations and players.
So I recently interviewed Babbly, and they do learning, child and adult learning to help your child communication skills via app and via background AI. And they recently just secured funding. I noticed on LinkedIn they announced they secured it when I was interviewing her. She couldn't. It was in talks. Anyway, her advice was she would have built a smaller MVP, because they wasted a lot of time building a lot of extra features they didn't need into the MVP to get things going. So I think really there is a focus on, to get back to how do you build a good product with limited resources, really having a laser focus on the limited feature set or the limited functionality that you actually need to deliver, and focus on those 1, 2, or 3 things early on, because that you focus your limited resources on that and then go from there.
I think it's understanding what your bare essentials are. I've always kind of looked at things, especially projects or campaigns at work, is what is your make and what is your break? The break is, what are the components that will absolutely break this campaign? What will not allow it to go on? And the make is, what's the sizzle? What are the fun things that we would love to put on, but that are an added benefit? Because you need to focus, in my opinion anyway, you really truly need to focus on what is going to break it. What are the bare essentials to your product? And the other fun things are fun.
So we're going to, with the fact that we're talking about lockdowns and COVID continuing to at least the end of the year, how are you, and you hinted at this at first, Justin, and you, Deanna, and you, Trevor, keeping your business and community active and engaged during the holiday/winter season, especially now with more regions being locked down here in Toronto? Is it much different than pre-COVID?
Yeah, so the big difference for us is pre-COVID, everyone who we reached out to was either running a sports organization or about to set up a new season. Right now, when we reach out, it's a big question of, are they running? Which area are they in? What are the hot spots? So we're kind of looking at this holiday season as like almost like a reset maybe for everyone, where typically a lot of seasons will end in, let's say, October or so to November, and then the winter season will start up in January. Our goal is to kind of just reach out to a lot of these people, see how things are going, see if they're having any concerns, and that's the idea there.
I don't know. Is anybody actually, if Toronto, I think, is in the red zone now, they said. So, is anybody going to be even able to congregate to do any winter sports? Who knows how long this is
Resume.
going to last, but it's really too soon, I think, to even think about that for them. And unfortunately for a business, it's really hard to plan because you really need to know what the be a fortune teller, and there's no way to be able to do that, predict the future like that.
Yeah, so how do Justin's audience is North American wide, so it's not just Toronto. So he has people in a red zone, in a yellow zone, in a whatever different color and number zones they are. So they all have different
Dude,
concerns.
don't even talk about what's going on in the U.S. Though. There are no-go zone all over.
Yeah.
Right. But then again, couldn't that be an opportunity? Because they don't necessarily have the same lockdown structure that we do in Canada. Are you not able to find some areas in the US that are a little bit more open and would be more accepting or more interested in your approach?
It's interesting. We actually try to target in general more liberal or more blue states or counties in the US, just because they kind of, from our experience, tend to be taking more steps and be willing to spend more money regarding the risks around COVID-19. So things like New York, New Jersey, California, we definitely started targeting a lot at first. And then we kind of started to realize that it's actually more generally any kind of big city they're really looking for support. So we started to find some success in Texas, so like Houston, Austin, et cetera. And I mean, so we actually have a large number of sports organizations, even in Toronto, that are back and running. It looks like what's kind of happening is they're coming in and out of their season. So every now and then they'll let us know that they're shut down for a month, and then they'll come back. It does also depend a lot on the sport, and then also whether it's indoor and outdoor, stuff like that.
But with you, Deanna, having a product, how does it, we're coming into winter and holiday season. You've got to figure out how to get your product in the hands of people. Does it change how you engage your community with more lockdown and winter coming, which, in Toronto or in Canada, we stay inside?
So there are a couple benefits for our kind of structure. One is that we are primarily an online, like we're Shopify, we are direct to consumer. So although we have a pop-up, that is the only person-to-person contact that we have. Everything is ordered online and just shipped out. The impact that we do have is looking at, again, if there are more lockdowns, will people be going out? So will they need or / will they lose their mask and need to replace them? Will they need organizing, tools to keep them, the family in check for the week? So that is the concern that we're looking at. That's kind of a negative of going into winter. Although I do have to say, today was quite cold. I had my mask on. It was quite toasty warm. So that's a benefit.
It's better than a scarf.
It's better than a scarf. So one of the things that we've started to do is really look at understanding that this winter is going to be quite difficult and very challenging for most people. We've really started to look at, we've sent out surveys to our current base. What are the favorite books? What are some favorite recipes? What are some things that you are looking forward to in the winter and with your family? So really trying to cultivate a library or a resource toolbook of feel-good things. We have a designer on deck for the new year to say, you've been in your house for almost a year and you want to make some updates. Here are a few different things that you can do to refresh your look. So we're really trying to approach winter in our customer base from a very personal space. It goes far beyond, in my opinion, the mask. The mask is the tool for human connection. And without that human connection, how can we help support people? And we can support them with mental health tools by showing them different amazing things and different, community people or actioners or ambassadors that are doing good things. And those are all stories you want to hear. And you want to hear about that, especially through the lens of something like the food banks. How are we helping there? How are we helping with, other communities that are a little bit not as, oh my gosh, what's the word? Not as fortunate.
So, and
that's specifically.
Here's a question for you, Deanna. I mean, have you thought about expanding your product line to other things that people might just be able to buy and use in their homes, not necessarily mask related, but other things that are going to be sort of, if you're going to be inside, lockdown related type products, or, focus on telling people, reminding them about the charitable aspect of what it is that you do, and the fact that them buying masks, even though they may not be going out as often, buying a mask is still doing good for somebody else?
So that's an excellent question. It's definitely something that we have tossed around at the table.
The breakfast table?
Do we take the breakfast table? Yes. Yeah, the wine table is becoming much more frequent, but
yeah.
Do we start to, you're absolutely right. Do we start to expand to a different type of lifestyle products that while you're at home, like maybe it's a cozy sweatshirt, maybe it is, really cute little slippers, to encourage that well-being, that sense of comfort while you're at home, especially during the winter.
Gloves with a face mask pouch on them.
Oh, see? Ideas, my friend. That's great.
Yeah. Craig's got ideas coming out the wazoo, man.
But I truly believe that if we look at the human aspect and who we are and how we have to wear this mask, it's not necessarily just the mask. It is the person who has to use it. So how do we identify those pain points? How do we look for those solutions? And how do we take a few risks and be a little bit creative with it?
But even with the lockdowns, there's still going to be people that have to go to work. There's going to be those essential workers who need to go to work, right? And there's people who you can't get around that.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I know that we're talking specifically about products that we have, but when you look at the efficacy of a high quality mask versus something that is garbage, this will not end, even in my opinion, even if we have a vaccine soon within the next year, it will not end if people do not have good products that protect them effectively and they wear them appropriately.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the marketplace story?
Oh no, which one? Oh,
they just did recently.
CBC.
Yes, they just did. They were talking about how, the higher quality masks exactly are obviously going to be better for you. But one of the things that they talked about was just even the thread count of the mask is important.
The thread count. One of the things I find really fascinating is that specifically when you talk about this face covering aspect, the WHO, the CDC, and Health Canada from the beginning have said, do not wear bandanas, do not wear gaiters, and do not wear masks with the ventilator.
Yeah.
And yet you see them everywhere. They were part of that, the marketplace episode was looking at photos of our police, the RCMP, and they have the ventilator masks. And they're like, we're trying to phase them out. And it's like, there's no try. Like 9 months ago, 10 months ago, these three agencies that I really arguably are some of the best in the world, have said, do not ever wear these. And yet they're still sold. I remember chatting with a customer and she's like, my mask is it is so hot and I can't breathe and I'm just sweating. And I'm like, well, it's neoprene. It's gonna be hot. So people buy things without doing the research. And I fully appreciate that there's been a lot of piracy specifically at the beginning. But I hope that even when, Trevor, you're absolutely right, even when we enter the winter and we are not necessarily going out as much, that people maybe take that opportunity to do a little bit more research, become a little bit more educated, and buy products that are going to protect them and their community, and not just because it was the one that they needed because they were going to Starbucks and forgot their mask.
Yeah, I think an interesting thing here is kind of almost an intangible benefit to products like yours or products like mine is that they really set clear messaging from the top down of an organization. In my case, it's a sports club. In your case, it's a business that says, we're taking this seriously. You need to as well. Whenever I talk with clients, I usually bring up New Zealand as an example. I think that's an example of a place that really handled the risks of COVID well. Right from the top level of the government, they were setting clear messaging over what needs to be done, what people need to do to keep each other safe. And I know obviously them being an island, it's a bit easier, but they completely got the virus before it could really spread anywhere.
That has more to do with the people of the country, though, than
Mhm.
anything, because the people in that country want to help each other. They all believe that they're in this together. That isn't the case in a lot of these larger countries where people, I'm here for myself. I don't really care about what it is that you're doing. And if this mask, I don't believe it is going to help me. I don't believe it's hurting my freedoms. It's keeping me from doing whatever it is I want. You get all that crap that comes in North America.
Mhm.
You don't see that kind of stuff over there because that's not the way they
That's
are.
not their culture.
I think, I mean, we can break this down. So when I'm setting up a sports organization, one thing I learned that I need to tell them in order to make sure everyone gets set up and everyone's comfortable with downloading a new mobile app on their phone is I just say, be really clear with your members. Say, this is serious. This is how we're preventing people, or this is how we're screening people to help prevent the spread, to keep you safe, to keep your kids safe, to keep our coaches safe. And once I started telling organizations to do that and send that email out and just be very upfront, then I mean, we saw our initial uptake with parents and coaches. It went up by a lot. Like it completely changed where before we'd see a lot of the clubs we set up not end up using the product just because once again, it's a new mobile app that you have to download, and it completely changed into, okay, now everyone's getting it because, you know, there's very clear messaging from the top down.
As a marketing guy, that warms my heart. Positioning and messaging works.
It does. It really does.
So, Deanna, do you want to introduce our next topic?
Sure. I think that this conversation has really lent us nicely, or leads us nicely into talking about when we look to returning to work. What are we going to be comfortable with? What are the structures of an office going to be? And how are we going to make that shift? So that's kind of my question to everyone. What are your thoughts?
I can honestly say I'm never going back to an office ever again. So, you know, I'm good with that. I'm okay. I'm okay with that. For me, my biggest concern obviously is making sure that I keep my family safe, but more so my elderly father, Candace's parents, you know, keeping myself out of harm's way so that I can keep them out of harm's way. It's really what it boils down to. So the less time I have to spend outside of my home, the better it is for me until this thing blows over, which is, we don't know.
So do we feel that is, because I agree with you, is that a luxury of a startup or a very small business that we can make those decisions? Or is it something that, you know, when you look at TD or the large law firms, do we feel that they have the same flexibility in judgment, in direction, to say, if you don't ever want to come back, you don't have to?
Well, some companies have already done that, though. Like I think Google did that with their employees, and so did Facebook, I think, as well. Said that they didn't have to come back at least until January.
Right. But
so,
you know,
I mean,
so 2 years down the road, do we think that that's still going to be the case? And how will someone like a Google say, okay, great, so we're going to estimate that 50% of our workforce is not going to come back. So what's going to happen to these huge campuses?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, this is why I was saying earlier, I'm convinced that the commercial rental market is going to crater, because there's all these businesses who have all of this office space, and only half the people are now going to be in them. And even if we hit this lockdown state, or not lockdown, but we have these limited gatherings, like right now, you can only have 10 people in your house or whatever, right? What's that going to be like in an office where they have 2,000 employees?
Yeah.
What's the minimum number they can have there? Right. And if they can't have anybody there, then what happens to that office space after 6 months?
Absolutely.
The business is still paying the rent for it because those landlords still want their money. And
well, especially after.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I was going to say that I used to work for a large law firm, and they had 25-year leases on their huge TD, buildings downtown. Mm-hmm. And it's like, so what they're doing now is no one is there, and they're just riding out their leases.
Yeah, but I mean, the government was doing that supplement for businesses for their rental that they had to pay. But I mean, a lot of these large corporations, they get that money, but that's not enough. And the commercial real estate people, they're hurting too. But at that same time, can they say, well, we don't want to take our clients' money? They have to in order for them to survive. And so you get to this vicious circle of who's gonna lose out here.
So I did hear, and I did read a story in the news a couple of months ago about a CEO who bought a brand new, like, huge facility, 4 times the size of what they had prior, in order to provide his teams with 4 times the space. So instead of having a cube, as we were talking about before, being 5 by 5, they each had 20 by 20, or the equivalent of that. Do we think that could be a pattern as well, where, leadership says, for those who come back, great, you have huge offices now. And will it go back to, because there was all of this, take down the walls and it's open concept. Will we start to resurrect walls, and what will that actually do to the structure of a company?
Who pays for that new space that they've got, right? Because the shareholders are going to say, yeah, no, let's do this for the coworkers because we're trying to keep them safe. But at some point, whatever products it is that they sell, that cost has to be built into that. So at the end of the day, their customers are going to pay for that. Mm-hmm. And if they're a commercial company that's selling to businesses, well, okay, maybe that might work out for them. But then those businesses now have to cover the cost of this extra thing, and it just trickles down. And eventually, at the end of the day, some little person is going to have to start paying for that.
I think it also calls into question, there are a number of very traditional roles, different traditional industries. I'm thinking, the legal industry, banking, that has really designed their entire success model on traveling constantly. Like, you think of consultants, and, Craig, you can speak to this more firmly than I can, but you probably lived out of a bag. And that was part of the allure of working at a big top firm in consulting, where there are people who design their lives around that. And how will that need to change?
At Deloitte, there was 6 to 12 month time where I was only home on Wednesday.
Right? Like, shocking.
And it was just, after a while, it sounds exciting, and it is exciting at times.
It's such a grind.
Yeah. Yeah. You just.
Listen, I had a friend whose territory, his territory was the Caribbean. After about a year and a half, he's like, I can't do this anymore. I got to get out.
I know. I can't see another beach.
He was traveling there. He was there 3 weeks out of every month.
Shocking, right?
Yeah. But how long till things go back to that? You're at I won't say normal, because we don't know what that is anymore, but you're at a disadvantage not being in the room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
think that's the big question, as you mentioned, that people have right now is this something that's going to be for another 3 years? And we need to invest in, expecting people are going to be staying at home and making sure that there's, for us, we all jump on a Google Meet at the beginning of the day, and then we just kind of sit on there throughout the day, and we can chat with each other if we want to, versus, are we going to have a tentative return? That's an important question. And then the other question is, how does your organization work? Can you work from home? Is it possible based on the culture of the employees, based on the nature of what you do? I think it's very dependent from business to business. As long as
I think it's also age is in there.
Yeah,
in my
very
opinion.
True. If you're taking care of someone who is at risk, or you're at risk yourself, to what extent should a company, be able to afford for you the flexibility to say, no, I need to stay at home. I don't want to get someone sick.
I think it's also expectation in terms of the leadership and their age. I think that, please challenge me on this, but the older demographic has a very strong, widespread brush, so big generalizations, but has much more of a comfort in seeing you face to face and going to the office and having, being in your suit and you are there and that is your face time. That there's no other way to build a connection other than you being in the office. And I think that this time will also really challenge that. I think it will also really challenge the home dynamic. And will both parents, if they're, school programs and sport programs, if those cannot continue, will both parents continue to have the ability to work and manage the home as well?
So I spent some time working for a company where the CEO insisted that nobody should ever work from home, ever. And this was going back about almost 10 years now, but their position was, it's like, you need to be in the office. That's how you work. It's mostly salespeople. So, they were doing an inside sales job, and their job was just to get on the phone and call people. And if they were at home, he was afraid that they're never going to be doing that and whatever else.
Totally.
And, March and April rolled around, and everybody's now working from home, and they had to pivot. And a lot of businesses were like, how are we going to get people to work from home? Guess what? You all found out the hard way how to do that. And the next thing you know, things like Zoom, all of a sudden their stock prices just skyrockets, because that's the only thing that everybody really knows how to get onto anymore. Right. And their company name has now become a verb.
I think that this is an interesting management problem. So when we first all started working from home, we did see a productivity dip, right? And I think that's honestly on myself and everyone else in the executive team, because we didn't know how to manage a team from home. So today we now do more frequent check-ins in the morning and at night, saying, what are our goals for today? What did we accomplish? And then we're just much more clear with what our targets are. And we found that that's gotten everyone back on track, and we've managed to jump back in there. So we're finding things are working for us. And honestly, I don't know if we'll be returning to the office anytime soon, because things are working. But at the same time, it would be nice to get a more face-to-face relationship with a lot of our employees, because we definitely hired a number of employees since this has started that I've never personally met. So it's an interesting question that we definitely are thinking about.
Well, one of the productivity things that ended up happening for a lot of people in businesses is that all of a sudden these employees were now working from home, but they were also doing school from home for their kids. They were also taking care of their elderly family members who may have been, either in a nursing home at some point, then they took them out because they were afraid of what was going to happen, what's going on with the nursing homes, or for whatever reason. But all of a sudden, all of the things that they have in the home that they're dealing with just only on the evenings now became something they had to deal with during working hours. And that entire shift just created a lot of chaos for a lot of companies.
And a lot of households.
Yeah, that too.
And I think just to kind of wrap this up before we move on, I think you touched it there, Justin, when you're talking about, you have adapted to different meetings and different styles because you realized your productivity had dropped and you had to manage your people different. What Deanna was hinting at, is that the older people, and, myself included, and, maybe not me specifically just because I don't have staff, but the older crowd who was educated 40, 50 years ago on old ways to manage people, who really didn't know if you were working if you weren't sitting at your desk. Things have to change, because managing people remotely, getting their emotions, bringing the team together is all different now. And we have a leadership that doesn't have the skills currently to deal with these kinds of changes, I think. Does that make sense?
It does. Wow. Good way to put it.
And over to you, Trevor. What is your last topic for this evening?
Oh, well, I mean, it's simply a simple one, actually. I saw a story the other day in the newspaper talking about should COVID vaccine be mandated for people who are working in office places. Like, can an employer actually do that? And I don't know what the right answer is, but it certainly was an interesting discussion topic.
Well, let's go around the table. Should the government or your employer mandate you get vaccinated? Justin.
All right. Sure, I can't go sneaking at the end. And
I'm happy to say no. I think you
I'm-
shouldn't mandate it, and because I'm that guy.
I my thoughts are I kind of think of it the same thing with mass, where you're totally fine to not get it, but you should probably be staying at home then. Because I mean, yeah, if you can't force someone to get a vaccine, right? I mean, I know, like, even at the not getting into the whole kind of argument of it, I mean, some people at the very least are allergic to them and just can't get one, right? I think, I mean, yeah, if you want to go that route, maybe just say if you don't want to get vaccinated, you can work from home. That would be the way I'd view it.
So your position though is that you think that every employee should have the vaccine then, or
If
work from home.
they're coming into the office.
And this is the thing. It's like, so as an employer, do you put that message out and say, okay, there's a vaccine available. We think you should take it, and if you don't take it, don't come back to work. Does that mean that they're mandating it, or are they just suggesting?
And
Well,
are
I
you
mean,
telling your employees you're not allowed to come to the office?
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, we'll likely, if we do go back to an office route, we'll likely be a bit more flexible with it, just based on what we're finding works now. Is, maybe we can have an office and only mandate 1 or 2 days at a time, or 1 or 2 days per week. So
But there are some people who have no choice but to go back to an office setting. And what are their employers going to do for them at that particular point? Because I mean, you have to make it there's a whole reason why there's a workplace health and safety boards, right? They mandate workplaces be safe for their employees. That's the job. That's what you have to do.
So I mean,
if this will do it, then why not? But then there's the moral aspect of it is, can you really mandate for someone to get a vaccine?
I mean, I was obviously thinking of things, from my side, more generally. I mean, the precedent is, in my mind, just already set by the available vaccines, where doctors recommend it. Everyone, they say that you should get it, but they don't force anyone to. I mean, if we were going to go the actual route of what should be required by law, I think you should probably treat it as any other vaccine.
Sure, but if people don't take the flu vaccine, you don't tell them to stay home, do you?
No, but I mean, it's obviously dependent on the situation. In 3 or 4 years from now, I mean, hopefully, if enough people get vaccinated that we start to see herd immunity, I hopefully will just say, hey, now everyone can come to work. You don't need to be vaccinated anymore.
So the government has secured something like 330 million doses of vaccine. And the problem is, if I have the article in front of me, I don't at the moment, but it's from 10 different companies. We have a Canadian company that, no one's ever heard of. Maybe you have if you're watching Canadian news, but I don't. Then they got the Pfizer, then they got the Moderna, then they've got deals with a bunch of other different companies. So when you say you're going to mandate the vaccine, which one? And are they all tested? Did they all have the same side effects? Do they all have the same different stuff? No, because some are like the new mRNA or the RNA vaccines versus the other ones. Is the vaccine a lifetime vaccine, like a true vaccine, or is it, the shot you get yearly or every 3 or 4 years? I mean, there are a bunch of things we don't know yet. And I'm what I would call a safe vaxxer. There's a lot of stuff. This feels like it's being rushed to market because of the huge demand in the industry. And because of the situation, I feel there's going to be a lot of people who are going to stand up and say, yeah, give me the vaccine because I want it right away, which is great. But I want to be a little cautious. I'm going to say, I'm going to take it in the second round or third round once I know that a few other million people are happy with it and that it's, and it's done what I would think is maybe more of a due diligence process. Now, maybe I'm naive through that process, but I've gotten most of the vaccines in the past. I don't take the flu anymore because I had a bad reaction a couple of times. So I'm a little concerned about, what are the ingredients? Am I going to have a reaction to this? What? But those concerns will be answered only over time.
And I don't know if Trevor feels the same way, but what I would take versus what I'm going to give my young child when there's zero understanding of the repercussions of taking this, positive or negative, that's a whole other question too. Like,
Yep.
That is also a breakfast table discussion to have, but it's looking at, like, me putting myself at risk is one case.
Because you're making an educated choice about it.
Totally. And I'm, I am the age I am. I've lived a very good life. Like my 2-year-old.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm the same way, and also thinking about whether or not I should encourage our elderly parents to get it. It's like, we don't know enough about it to be able to do that. So I'm not even sure what to do in that case.
I agree. So, I also think that as people, sorry, Craig,
go ahead.
As we look to these vaccines, these possible vaccines that will cure us all, they're not going to come to all of us in one day, poof by magic. I am a strong believer that this is going to, as if Pfizer is not going to take the opportunity to commoditize this and make as much money as possible, especially when you look at something like the US and their such pyramid structure to healthcare and available, medicine. The people who are the most at risk are not going to be the ones to get it for, in my opinion, years.
Probably.
So, right? So
if you don't have money, you won't get it.
Totally. If you don't have healthcare, you won't get it. So we are at such a unique position here in Canada where it's like, okay, the flu, shot is here, take it when you want. But I just think that is not the case for so many other countries, specifically ones like the US. And I have friends who have said, absolutely, who, are from very wealthy families who have said the moment it comes out in the US, they're flying down with their entire family and paying whatever they need to. And I'm like, but you don't know. And you just go
why don't you take that money and buy some masks?
Yeah, exactly. I have some. Just go to your Muskoka compound. You guys will be fine for an extra 6 months and just slow your roll.
Take this case of masks with you.
Yes, exactly.
And it's going to be a few months before they're available for us, like January, maybe, February, March. So we might have a lot more information. But right now, it's the mysterious vaccine that these billion-dollar companies are racing to market so they can gain trillions of dollars on the global.
Totally.
Let's not.
And again, looking at what does available really mean? It's not poof, it's at your door front, and here's your specific vaccine.
Luckily enough, or however you want to put it, Justin Trudeau on the world stage is known as the COVID vaccine hog. He's gone out and secured all the contracts for 300 million doses.
He's the real deal maker, man.
People are like, the WHO is because he's trying to get, we have enough to cover everybody in the country, 30 odd million of this doses and so many of this and so many of this. Some of them take 2. I think if you believe that at least one of them are going to come through, I think he's rolling the dice on all of them, saying, well, we're going to get as much.
You're going to hedge your bets.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting scenario then, because if we're talking about the Canadian government trying to ensure that it protects its citizens, does that mean that as a business owner, you need to worry about that then? Just to bring it back to my original question.
Yeah.
Well, the Canadian government indicated that it'll be free and made widely available to everybody. But the question is, who wants to take it? The consensus around here, and I didn't hear, is that we wouldn't necessarily be in first in line. I didn't hear Justin say one way or the other.
I'd jump in.
Yeah, there you go. I wasn't sure. But we all have different mindsets with that, right? I think, and have different fear and different this and different perspectives. And I think they're all valid. So if we see a rollout starting, say, February, March of the vaccine, I could see you're allowed to open up and come back to the office once you've been vaccinated over moving back to orange, moving back to yellow, moving back to green. Now we've got X number of people. The vaccination's been available for 6 months. Maybe we moved back to what you're going to call herd immunity, which we rely on for almost everything else. But That assumes they'll know how many people go out and get the get the vaccine, right? If it's and the marketing campaign will kick up because all the everybody wants to use the government spent money in the vaccines and whatnot. So
true, but I feel that if an employer decides that they won't let people come back until they've been vaccinated, that could end up being a real PR nightmare for them. In the court of public, in the court of public opinion, that may not go over very well.
Well, I don't want to. We're talking about it. Why not? In the European Union, they're mandating all the frontline workers, the healthcare workers, to get it first. And
see, that's a different story, though.
80,000 of them have signed a petition saying no, we don't want to do that.
which is fair, but if you're in that position, then you know what, you're in a greater position to be able to infect people, because you're going to see a hell of a lot more people coming into your hospital or wherever it is that you're at. So I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. Again, I don't want someone to be forced to take a vaccine, but I get the logic behind why they want to do those people first.
It's a slippery slope. But I understand why you want to make it available for the people with the most contact first, because if you're trying to stop the flow of a disease, the people who have the most contact with it should be immunized first too.
And not only that, the people who can help you get over it and help you survive it need to be taken care of first.
But I'm not a big fan of anything being forced on anyone. But that's a whole other discussion. Right? If I don't want to wear a mask, great. I don't have to leave my house.
Yeah. If you do, you wear a community mask.
But I respect the rules of the business or mandated or what have you at the time. I'm only going to be here. I'll wear a mask, or I'll do this, or I'll do that. But that getting a vaccine is a little bit more than putting on a mask for 5 minutes while you're in grabbing a coffee or getting your groceries. So this controversy has been around. There's anti-vaxxers everywhere. There's talk about how they make vaccines. Yeah, and there's talk about how they've changed how they made the vaccines over the last few years. So peanut allergies is because people have been vaccinated after 1989. Is that right, or is that not right? And but anyway, we've got the all new technology coming in for these new vaccines, and it's a little scary because it's brand new, new types of stuff that's never been done, messing with parts of our DNA.
I'm not trying to be anyone's guinea pig. Is really what it boils down to.
I want it to work. I want it to be good, and then when it is, I'm there.
So we are what we call in the marketing world laggards.
Yeah,
right.
We're not early adopters on this one.
We're not the early adopters,
except for Justin.
Except for
I'll wait for you all to get wild and out first, and then figure out if it's working for you. Then I'll maybe look at getting it for myself.
And this is where apps like Justin's come in, where, all right, I haven't got the vaccine, but so that means if I want to take part in the sports league, if I want to do that, I still have to go get tested. I have to get my stuff in the app. I have to have my health passport or whatever to show that I'm actively being able to protect other people at the same time. Does that make sense, Justin?
Yeah, and I think, this could even go further back in the analogy where, before they even announced that they had a vaccine, it had already been used on a bunch of, people and through a placebo test. So those could be even looked at as a beta tester, if you will. For myself, actually, a good friend of mine, his girlfriend is, I think, the person in Toronto working on the vaccine.
Sweet.
And they switched her over from a different one onto this one. So it's kind of been interesting to hear, I guess from my friend's perspective, where he thinks things are. I know for myself, I don't really know much about it, but if things go through, the proper procedures, I'm definitely comfortable getting stabbed. I might save someone's life. So sure.
And that's noble.
A mask can save someone's life too, though, right?
I'll do both.
So we've gone a little bit over time, but that's what happens when we have a healthy discussion. So do you have any parting words? And if people want to go and find out more about Javelin, where do they go, Justin?
Yeah, definitely. You can check out our website, javelinsportsinc.com. That's sports with an S at the end. We're also on all the different socials at app Javelin, APP Javelin.
So Deanna's mic cut out, I think. So Deanna, can you put your website there in the chat room for people? It's communitymass.ca, I believe. You can nod if that's correct. Maybe she can't hear me. She lost her mic. We can see her picture. Trevor, any parting words from you?
Well, just in general about this whole conversation we were having with regards to COVID and everything else from a business perspective, just if you're a business owner and you're trying to figure out what to do, just ask around. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There's people out there who can help you. Craig offers workshops that you can go to figure out if you need to pivot your business, or if you need to learn about how to better market your business during this type of period. Now's the time to start looking for that type of information, because that's what's going to help you. That's what's going to help you continue running your business, because at this time right now, everybody's struggling, right? So there's that.
And Songbird Marketing, people can find that where?
Oh, songbirdmarketing.com. We have our website. We have we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all of these social media, Twitter. Yeah, we have it all. But songbirdmarketing.com is where to start.
Everyone forgets to throw their promo in, and don't forget communitymass.ca. Get your face masks. Thank you, Deanna, for attending. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Trevor, for taking the time today and being part of Startup Talk.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks so much, Craig.